Going solar is easier and cheaper than you think if you follow these 6 steps. Going solar and battery backup has plenty of steps to it, but it can be easy if you follow this simple process. Be careful of door-to-door salespeople and predatory sales tactics. And remember, you can always message or send me a question if you like. But be careful. There are some dark corners to the solar industry, and some people have a bad taste. I see plenty of comments and I hear of plenty of bad stories. But if you're careful and you know what to look for, there's nothing to worry about, because these problems can be easily avoided. If you get yourself into a mess, you could be frustrated and regret going solar. But it might not have anything to do with the sun. Watch out for optimistic salespeople that can inflate your radiance numbers. And be careful of dealer fees, because they can increase the cost of the system when it has nothing to do with the components. But you could easily pay more if you didn't catch any of these issues. I've been selling, installing, and servicing solar systems for over 10,000 hours. That's 5 years full time. Sounds like a big number, which is just long enough for me to see the good, the bad, and even some scary stuff too. I'm going to share some knowledge about what I see in the industry, so that you can get the best system possible that you'll love for years to come. Going from ground zero to purchasing a solar system in 30 days is pretty fast. Most sales cycles take around 90 days. It really depends on your knowledge and understanding of what you want. If you know what you want and you're able to tell the salesperson what you're looking for, the process can go very quickly. But usually there's a lot of questions and there's an exchange of information that's necessary in order to get the right system designed for you. I tell people all the time, the design is the most important thing. Make sure that the design is done well and it's understood by both parties, because it can be hard to undo an installation. I've had buyers at the very end say, "Can I return this?" And my answer is always, yeah, no, there's no return policy here. But we do work with them and we find a solution that works for them. Sometimes it's just the way things look, or something that we can work through. Easy enough. But let's talk through the sales cycle so that you understand how quickly you could go from interested in solar, usually you'll click a button that says get a free quote, to a full-blown solar system. Because 30 days is pretty fast, but if you know what you're doing, you can do it. Here we go. So step 1 is what we call discovery and bill review. So make sure you have your utility bill handy. That includes the last 12 months of usage, and you have a good understanding of that usage is normal or unusual, high or low, because that's just a starting point. The utility bill isn't the end-all determination of how many solar panels you should get. So inevitably, I hear customers that get asked the question, "So what are you looking for?" And they're not exactly sure. Well, I would like to save money on my electric bill. And yes, that's typically what the solar sales process is geared toward. But there's so much more to it. When we talk about batteries, generators, smart home panels, and all those different things that can come with the renewable energy system, the utility bill is just a portion of it. And in reality, there's much more to it, including comfort and technology features that are just plain cool. So we can talk more about those later, but expect this initial discovery call to be an introduction to the salesperson, to learn a little bit about the company that you're working with, and inevitably be ready to answer those questions of how much money do you spend on your utilities today? How much do you want to spend on those utilities in the future? And what's your budget? Those are all extremely important steps. So step 2, and this is unique in that we suggest a different process. This step 2 is where a salesperson will come on site to take photos and do a site survey. They'll assess the home's irradiance. That's how much sun it gets, including angle of the roof, any trenching that's possible, and where the batteries might go. And this helps eliminate change orders and speeds the overall process to understand this. It's really important that during this site survey that you're able to describe what you're interested in and what your hopes are. And make sure you ask all those questions about where things will be installed or how it will look, because conduit can be an ugly thing. So make sure you understand where the conduit will run. The best place for the wires to go are in the attic so that it's concealed. It's really important that there's as little exposed conduit as possible, but sometimes it's necessary and it can blend in if it's done well. From there, in step 3, the system's designed and a proposal is created. That system design has to do with the exact panel layout on the roof, the inverter and storage system, such as Tesla or Enphase or any of the other great options that are out there. And if you're looking at whole home backup versus a partial home backup, those are important distinctions, and that will surface in the design and the proposal. It costs more to add batteries, and it costs more to do a whole home backup, because it's looking at backing up the entire home and not just a portion of it. The proposal will also display information that have to do with net metering and the payback period that your solar system is estimated to have. And payback periods is a simple calculation that tells you how long it will take to recoup the price of the system, essentially paying yourself back in savings from your utility bill. And this is a core concept of the solar proposal process, is this payback period. But I think it's a little overemphasized, and there's a lot more to solar and battery backup than just payback period. And some people get turned off because the payback period's not as good as they'd like, or they were hoping it'd be better. But that's because we're not including the full value of solar, because the value of solar is beyond net metering and what it can do for the environment and society as a large is much more valuable than just the net metering payback period. So I'll talk more about that because I have a lot to say about that. But just know that you'll have a payback period. And this is one of the key components in a proposal, in addition to the layout of the panels and the overall system design. So the design can be done quickly, and we'll give you options to choose from, such as a premium system or a basic system, batteries, whole home backup, no home backup. And sometimes proposals will include heat pumps or water heaters or some of these energy efficient components that can be grouped with the installation. All right, step 4 is financing and incentives timeline. So a portion of the process is how will the system be paid for? And some people just pay with cash. They just write out a check and pay for the system. And this reduces the interest cost and is one of the fastest ways to get your payback period, because you don't have that additional burden of interest. There are other financing options as well, and we encourage most people to go to a local bank or a credit union that has a specific solar program. We work with credit union that does a great job. They have low closing fees, and they've got really competitive rates. And ultimately, this is the best way to get value out of your system, is to make sure that that financing doesn't eat up the value of the system. I've spoken about dealer fees before, and these are increased costs that has nothing to do with the components themselves. It's just a convenience fee or dealer fee that's added on top of an easy way to finance the system. A lot of times you'll see maybe just a mobile app or a quick application to see financing, when in most cases we see a full application and sometimes even membership papers, like at a credit union, and to become a member before that application's filled out. They're not as fast. I'm totally honest with that. Credit unions aren't as fast. It takes much longer to get done. Step 5 is permitting and procurement and scheduling. So permitting is a really interesting one, and this is specific to your specific jurisdiction. So this permitting process can be fast and easy, simple. Usually that's like through a state website, but it can be slow and painful and expensive. Okay, some of these cities or even other jurisdictions that have really difficult processes in order to get these systems approved, and it can be painful. I'm sorry, this is a real problem. And certain people, so for example, wherever you're at, you may have a really difficult or a really easy permitting process. That's not your fault, right? And it does increase the cost of the systems to go through these permitting processes because it's very lengthy and a lot of applications to fill out. And these places don't have great customer service. They're difficult to work with. So permitting, though, just gives you the go-ahead to install the system according to those local rules. And these have to do with where's the battery going to be placed, where are the solar panels pointing, or how do they look, and do they comply with all the local rules. Now, as a general rule, nobody can tell you no, that you can't install a solar system. You just need to follow the rules and fill out the correct paperwork. Most of the time it has to do with the fee. They're just trying to collect money. Once the permitting is approved in step 5, we have procurement and scheduling. And procurement is just a process of ordering the parts, staging them either by the distributor or in the installer shop, and then scheduling. This is a process where we have to set aside a day or 2, sometimes 3 days, where the installers have access to the home, including attic space, roof, basement, or potentially a service room of some type. Typically, we see inverters and batteries installed in garages because we live in a cold weather climate where the batteries can't be outside. I know in a warm environment where it doesn't get below freezing, the batteries can be outside. They're in a waterproof case, and they're just fine on an outside wall because they don't get too cold. So the general rule for batteries is freezing. They'll discharge down to -4, but they won't recharge until they warm back up to 32. And sometimes we'll see that even be a little more. So if your overnight lows get down below freezing, you'll want it in a garage. And they don't necessarily need to be heated, but they need to be above freezing. So that scheduling is important, and placement of where the system will be installed is extremely important as well. So installation then is a process of a day or 2 where installers will be attaching the system to the roof, running wires through the walls, and ultimately down to an electrical panel. Commissioning is a process of turning the system on. The commissioning process is a startup process where the system connects to the internet, checks in with all the individual components, applies software updates if applicable, and ultimately configures the system to operate correctly. And even for a single manufacturer, there can be several different types of systems that can be configured, especially if you have a battery. So starting up the system, checking it in as part of step 6 is the last portion of the install before we get an electrical inspection, because in step 7, the system's been installed, it's been commissioned, but then it gets turned off because the system can't export to the grid without permission to operate, or PTO. So it's important to know that this can be frustrating for homeowners because they've signed contracts, they've gone through design, the system's even installed and it's turned on, but now we have to wait for an inspection. And this inspection is typically an electrical inspector who's going to look at the system and verify that it's installed to a minimum safety standard that's been set by the National Electric Code or the code book. Once that gets inspected, they'll give a green sticker, is what we typically see, or the go ahead to proceed. And then the last step, step 8, which is PTO, or permission to operate, is an extremely important step because this is the utility granting permission to operate, which entails installing a net meter, which the meter is just the round glass on the outside of the house. And that can either be configured or programmed remotely, or they'll actually physically change out the meter. They'll pull that meter out, put in a new one that is a net meter that's configured for net billing. Really, that just means that it'll run backwards, which running backwards is the coolest part of solar because you're selling power back to the utility. Now you don't sell it back, you just get credit. So the last step then is to turn the system on because it's already been commissioned, it's ready to go. We've passed electrical inspection, step 7. Step 8, we have received permission to operate and we start the system up. By this time, you should have a mobile app that helps you understand how much you're producing, and you've been given some general instructions on how the system will work. Yeah, woo, party time. This is when the system starts to work, and you'll be able to monitor it from your mobile app. So that is quite a few steps, but they're easily navigated if you have a great installer that communicates with you, and you do need a little patience to follow the process and not get too frustrated because the state inspectors can be slow and the utilities can be slow as well. And I'm sure some installers are extremely busy and they can be slow as well. And this construction process, may be equivalent to a remodel or a new fence or a new deck. That solar and battery backup is a construction process. And there are some unexpected and unknowns that have to be navigated. So we encourage our customers to understand the process ahead of time and be ready for a multi-step process that can be completed in 30 days if you're really fast. But most likely it's going to take 90 days or more before the whole process is completed.